What is going on, everybody? James Hancock here. I'm back with the box office breakdown for Sunday, May 10th, where The Devil Wears Prada 2 is still number one globally. The movie has now grossed $433 million, which is one of several reasons why this weekend's box office is 88% ahead of the same weekend frame from a year ago. But before I get any deeper into my rant, let me first say Happy Mother's Day to all the mothers out there, and in honor of the holiday, let me share my favorite movie clip where two women with very strong maternal instincts just throw down and go to war.
Get away from her, you bitch!
Also, I'm sorry that I missed last weekend's box office breakdown, but as a lot of you know, I got hacked and obviously I got my channel back, but I explained all the details in a video that I'll link in the description below. At any rate, let's pause to congratulate the movie business for giving us some variety and counter-programming this weekend, which for me is always the key to a very healthy marketplace, because whether you're into fashion or video games or pop music or horror or science fiction, there are some decent options at the theater this past weekend. And as I mentioned already, this weekend was 88% ahead of the same weekend from last year. But what's even more impressive is that last year we had Sinners, Thunderbolts, and Minecraft all in theaters, duking it out for first place. So what were the movies generating so many ticket sales this past weekend? Well, we obviously had Devil Wears Prada 2 in a very strong second weekend. We had the opening weekend of Mortal Kombat 2. We had Michael in its third weekend. We had Sheep Detectives. We had a concert movie with Billie Eilish. Super Mario Galaxy movie still generating numbers. Project Hail Mary still generating numbers. And we had Hokum still in the top 10. A horror movie which I absolutely loved. Sadly, it's not quite generating the ticket sales that I expected it to, but at least it's still in the top 10. But what I'm noticing with a lot of these movies in the top 10 is that they're appealing to a very specific audience or a very specific demographic. Like, let's go after the Mortal Kombat fans, or let's go after the Billie Eilish fans, as opposed to the strategy of a lot of your bigger blockbusters where they throw out this huge net, hoping to kind of bring in like a little bit of everybody, but nobody walks away from the movie all that satisfied because it's kind of a generic, watered-down experience. I much prefer a marketplace where we have more targeted movies, because what it reminds me of, back in the 1990s, when my whole family would go to the movies, it wasn't entirely uncommon that we would get to the theater and we'd kind of break up into different screens. Like, oh, well, these people are going to go see the Adam Sandler comedy, and these people are going to go see the Jim Carrey comedy, because back then we had so many comedies. You could kind of pick and choose what kind of comedies you're into.
Who want
Kid can't even read.
to
Cut it out, dude. You're gonna get us in trouble.
Today, Junior?
Like when I took my college girlfriend to see Star Trek First Contact back in, I guess, 1996 or 97, whenever it came out. But I'll never forget, we sat down to watch the movie, and 5 minutes into the movie, she was like, "This is stupid," and she got up and stormed out, and she went next door and she watched Romeo and Juliet for the 50th time with Leonardo DiCaprio. But it wasn't like it didn't lead to like a fight or an argument. After the movie, we went out to dinner and just, it was kind of business as usual. And I feel like if I could offer any advice to the movie business in general, it would be more movies like Hokum, which appeal to like a hardcore horror audience, as opposed to making big, bland kind of Blumhouse horror that's designed to appeal to a much wider, I guess, a wider array of different demographics all coming together. So let's check the official scoreboard and see where these movies stand and which movies are overperforming, which movies are underperforming, because The Devil Wears Prada 2, it's already grossed $433 million worldwide after just 2 weekends. That's kind of insane. I mean, the original movie, granted, it was 20 years ago, but unadjusted for inflation, the original Devil Wears Prada back in 2006 generated $326 million worldwide. So don't be surprised if we see a Devil Wears Prada 3 at some point in the not-so-distant future, or at a minimum, like a knockoff movie or a rip-off movie, because the formula of having girls in the world of fashion swapping insults and, like, you know, ripping each other to shreds, it's not that hard to imitate. For my money, I would rather have my teeth pulled out one at a time with a pair of pliers than watch any of this stuff, but clearly there's a giant audience that just eats this shit up. But the type of movie that is much more my speed, even if I wasn't necessarily that impressed with the individual movie, is Mortal Kombat 2, which opened to $40 million domestic, as well as $23 million more internationally. And keep in mind, the movie only had a budget of $80 million versus $55 million for the first movie back in 2021. But the big question is this a miss or is this right in line with expectations? If you go by the tracking and the prediction of Matt Bellany from The Town, this is a bit of a miss because every week he does a prediction for the upcoming box office and he sets the line at a particular number based on tracking and predictions, and he always calls the over or the under, and it's kind of a bet of pride between him and his collaborators. But he set the line from MK2 at $48 million, and he called the under. And for me, while I have a lot of really fond memories of Mortal Kombat from the early 90s, Mortal Kombat 1, 2, and 3, the stand-up arcade game, followed by the movie in the fall of 95, I mean, I love that whole era of Mortal Kombat. But I'm not surprised the movie only opened to $40 million because the movie's just not that good. I mean, the producer of the movie this past weekend was ranting and raving about how dare the critics, not like the movie. I'm like, well, the movie's got a terrible screenplay and a lot of wooden acting and some fight scenes that are not on the level that they should be for a movie called Mortal Kombat. I feel like when you make a movie called Mortal Kombat, you should move mountains to find the best choreographers, the best athletes, the best performers, and give us fight scenes unlike anything we've ever seen before. Like, people should walk out of the theater like, oh my God, like those are the craziest fucking fight scenes I've ever seen. Like, I saw better fight scenes last night just watching a regular UFC event when Sean Strickland fought Khamzat Chimaev, and congratulations to Sean Strickland for getting his belt back, which is very, very rare in the world of combat sports. But we're surrounded by combat sports all the time, and we have like 50 years of great martial arts movies to look back upon, because I feel like if your fight scenes aren't on the level of some of the best action movies we've seen over the last 50 years, well, then you're doing it wrong. Like, the bar has been raised by a lot of incredible filmmakers over the years, whether you're talking about filmmakers from Thailand or Japan or Hong Kong or America or you name it. There are great filmmakers all around the world who have given us incredible fight scenes, and I would say the fight scenes in Mortal Kombat 2 were adequate. They were serviceable, and some of them were just downright clumsy and boring. But also, when you're making a Mortal Kombat movie, the music needs to be first rate. The only thing people remember from that first Mortal Kombat movie from 31 years ago is that first song that opened up the movie, but it's still so popular to the present day. They closed the most recent movie with that song, and it's like, well, then how come you didn't have like 50 of those songs kind of sprinkled throughout the entire movie? But obviously, some people did enjoy it. The audience score or the popcorn meter over on Rotten Tomatoes is sitting at 89%, but the cinema score for the movie is a B. So clearly some people enjoyed it, and the crowd that I saw it with on Wednesday night, you could tell they were a bunch of Mortal Kombat fanatics, and they were applauding every kind of specific detail or Easter egg or callback to the games that they saw, whether it was a finishing move or whatever the case might be. So I think the producer of the movie, instead of going online and talking shit to all the people who didn't like the movie, and he has since deleted those posts because I think he finally realized this is bad form. But instead, what he should have done is just thanked all the people who came out to see the movie, who bought a ticket, who did enjoy the movie, because there were people who did enjoy the movie, and just say, thank you for supporting our film. We hope you loved it and enjoyed it, and we hope to make a Mortal Kombat 3 in the not so distant future. That's what he should have done. And getting back to that number of 23 million in international ticket sales, it doesn't surprise me at all, because if you're talking about Japan or South Korea or mainland China or Hong Kong or Indonesia or Thailand, all these countries have these rich traditions of incredible martial arts movies. So if you want to get them off their sofa into the theater buying tickets for your movie, well, then you need to hire, once again, the best international talent you can find and deliver some fight scenes that are unlike anything that people have ever seen. And MK2 just didn't do it. The only thing that Mortal Kombat 2 had to offer was fan service. And as I said in my review, as I was walking out of the movie, one member of the cleaning staff, as he walked in, was like, hey, how's the movie? And I just said, if you like Mortal Kombat, the movie's good fun. And I stand by that statement. If you're a Mortal Kombat fanatic, it's good fun, but I'm not going to recommend the movie to anybody unless they're an avid consumer of the game. So I think ultimately the movie failed in generating crossover appeal, but obviously it's got very specific appeals to a very targeted audience. And keep in mind, the movie's only got a budget of $80 million. So using conventional movie math, where you multiply the budget by 2.5 to account for the revenue split with theaters as well as your marketing, the movie needs to make it to $200 million worldwide in order to break even. I don't think it's going to make it there because the international is so low, but who knows? Maybe the diehard Mortal Kombat fans in America will just keep going again and again and again. For me, I am one and done. But if they make a third Mortal Kombat movie, I'll obviously be first in line. I love these characters. I love this franchise. But my advice would be lean into a little controversy the next time around. In the early 90s, the Mortal Kombat games were considered kind of like too hot to handle or a little controversial, a little too violent, a little bit too disturbing for parents and teachers and that sort of thing, which made teenagers like it all the more. There was nothing controversial about this new movie. It felt a little bit bland and kind of watered down, safe corporate approved studio product, but I feel like some real gore with some practical effects and some hardcore balls to the wall character beats, that'll definitely make Mortal Kombat feel cool again. And I feel like, yeah, they got to reclaim that the high ground of being the most violent, fucked up video game franchise out there. Because I think one of the big problems with Mortal Kombat 2 was that Johnny Cage was advertised as the star of the movie, but he was not the star of the movie. Katana was the star of the movie. And Katana, she's a classic character. She kicks all kinds of ass. She looks cool in combat. But my understanding was that Warner Brothers was trying to broaden the appeal of the franchise to include more girls. And this is always the kind of the existential question for any franchise. Do you chase the larger audience at the expense of the smaller one? Or do you try to appeal to the smaller one and hope they'll go 5, 6, 7 times to see your movie? Because if I were to offer my unsolicited advice from an aging gentleman who understands what made that franchise tick back in the early 90s, I think you include Katana, but you just let her be hot as fuck and let her kill a lot of people. And that's all the target audience for Mortal Kombat requires from a Mortal Kombat movie. You don't need to broaden the appeal and give her this great story about how she's becoming queen again of her kingdom and all this other crap that none of the Mortal Kombat fans care about. What they want to see Katana do is using those fan blades to just shred people to pieces, and they want her to look hot as fuck as she does it. And I'm sure a lot of people are going to say, like, how dare you speak so bluntly and candidly and honestly about what makes a franchise tick? But the reality is, if you want a movie to do really, really well, you got to understand kind of the beating heartbeat of that franchise in the first place, and trying to turn it into a movie about Katana reclaiming her throne. That ain't Mortal Kombat. Mortal Kombat is badass motherfuckers killing each other in visceral ways, and that's all you need. And another thing to keep in mind is that we have a Street Fighter movie coming out this fall. And back in the day, there was no greater rivalry than the rivalry between Street Fighter 2, which came out before, and Mortal Kombat, which came after. But then with all the subsequent iterations, there remained incredible competitors. We might see a situation later this year where the rivalry between the two franchises kind of fans the flames of interest in both franchises, driving them to greater heights. So yeah, we'll just have to wait and see how Street Fighter does this fall and what the future might hold for the Mortal Kombat franchise. But another movie still generating tons of box office is Michael, which is up to $240 million in North America with a global total of $577 million. And keep in mind, back in 2018, Bohemian Rhapsody, its final domestic tally was $216 million, so Michael is officially the highest grossing musical biopic of all time in North America. However, if it wants to dethrone Bohemian Rhapsody as the all-time most popular musical biopic, it will have to surpass $911 million worldwide. I don't know if it'll make it there or not, but still, $577 million globally is nothing to sneeze at. And the big question is, will they make a Michael 2, which leans into all the more controversial later chapters in his life? Who knows? But the last new movie I want to mention is the concert film Billie Eilish Hit Me Hard and Soft, which was co-directed by Eilish as well as James Cameron. And according to Scott Mendelson over on his Substack, this is the first James Cameron movie since The Abyss in the late 80s not to open at number 1. I'd have to double check, but after Titanic, but before Avatar, James Cameron had a few underwater exploration documentaries, but I don't know if they opened theatrically or not. So if they opened theatrically, well then I can't imagine they opened at number 1. So Scott Mendelson might be wrong. At any rate, as a little kid, I loved The Abyss. I watched it over and over and over again. And I was watching the butchered version with the changed ending, which even then I was like, what the fuck is going on? And then it started to make a little bit more sense when I saw the kind of restored version later on. I have no plans on seeing the Billie Eilish concert film. If you put a gun in my head, I couldn't name a single song by Billie Eilish. She's just not on my radar. But what is on my radar, Hokum at number 8 in week 2. I'm still rooting for this movie to define a wider audience. For my money, when it comes to original horror movies, non-franchise horror movies, and he's been offered franchise horror movies, but Damien McCarthy as a writer-director, for me, he's 3 for 3. Between Caveat and Oddity and Hokum, I love all of them, but Hokum scared the shit out of me. I saw it a second time. It scared the shit out of me again, which is very rare. Usually if I rewatch certain horror movies that I love, they lose the ability to scare me, and I just kind of think oh, how cool is this movie now? But I just watch it for different reasons later on. But if you like horror movies, more importantly, if you like original movies, not based on pre-existing IP, consider buying a ticket to Hokum, and you can thank me later.
There lived a witch.
Also, I feel like if you're a fan of horror movies, we're being very well fed this month, because not only did we have Hokum, but next week we have Obsession, then we have Passenger, and then we have Backrooms. And I'm sure some of those movies will stink, and some of them will be great. But 4 new horror movies in 1 month, it's a good time to be a horror fan. But as always with my box office breakdowns, I like to get the opinions of the experts. So let's head over to Variety, where Rebecca Rubin has an article titled Box Office, Devil Wears Prada 2 remains number one with 43 million. Mortal Kombat 2 launches to 40 million. Apparently, the gruff fighter Johnny Cage wasn't much of a match for the all-powerful Miranda Priestly. Disney's The Devil Wears Prada 2 retained the number one spot on domestic box office charts despite three major new releases, including the video game adaptation Mortal Kombat 2. The Devil Wears Prada sequel added 43 million from 4,200 North American theaters, declining just 44% from its debut while boosting its North American tally to 144.8 million. Meanwhile, the star-studded comedy has collected 288.4 million internationally for a strong global total of 433 million after just 2 weekends of release. Those ticket sales are above the entire lifetime haul of 2006's The Devil Wears Prada, which generated $326 million, not adjusted for inflation. Second place went to the Warner Brothers martial arts-inspired sequel Mortal Kombat 2, which launched to 40 million from 3,503 venues. The film powered to 63 million globally, including a softer-than-expected 23 million overseas. Critics and audiences seemed mixed on the R-rated movie, which has a 65% Rotten Tomatoes average and a B grade on CinemaScore exit polls. Mortal Kombat 2 was produced for 80 million, above the prior installment's 55 million price tag. The first Mortal Kombat opened at 23 million, though that figure comes with a major caveat. It landed simultaneously on HBO Max during the studio's disastrous year-long experiment known as Project Popcorn. Considering the reality that people were largely steering clear of cinemas at the time, the video game adaptation became a modest success with 42 million in North America and 84 million worldwide. Those aren't the kind of returns that would typically justify a sequel or launch a franchise, but HBO had reported that Mortal Kombat was among the streamer's most watched movies at the time. Warner Brothers clearly has high hopes for a theatrical series because a third film is already in development. As a broad genre, video game adaptations are in the middle of a true renaissance, says Sean Robbins, director of movie analytics at Fandango and founder of Box Office Theory. Recent wins in the space have included Super Mario, Minecraft, and Sonic the Hedgehog. He added that Warner Brothers' timing for Mortal Kombat 2 couldn't have served as a stronger example of counter-programming this Mother's Day weekend. Let me pause for a moment and push back on Sean Robbins' analysis. Video game adaptations are not a genre because video games have multiple genres within video games. You can tell any kind of story or create any kind of gaming experience you like. It's not just one genre. Like comedy is a genre, horror is a genre. Those are all genres. Video games are a medium through which you can tell any kind of story you like, as are the video game adaptations. And I feel like a big problem with a lot of folks in Hollywood who neither read comics nor play video games or do any of this nerdy shit. They think all superhero movies or all comic book movies are the same genre, and all video game adaptations are the same genre. These are mediums through which you can tell any kind of story you can think of, and the faster that executives in Hollywood realize that, the more success they'll have with their video game adaptations. But back to the article, two newcomers, Amazon MGM's charming whodunit Sheep Detectives and Paramount's concert film Billie Eilish Hit Me Hard and Soft the Tour, live in 3D, landed in 4th and 5th place respectively. Those movies opened behind Lionsgate's Michael, which took the number 3 slot with a remarkable 36.5 million from 3,550 theaters in its third outing, a scant 33% decline from last weekend. So far, the biopic about Michael Jackson has generated 240.4 million in North America and a massive 577 million globally. This weekend, Michael has outpaced the domestic gross of 2018's Bohemian Rhapsody, 216 million, to become the highest-grossing musical biopic of all time in North America. The Queen biopic remains far bigger at the worldwide box office, with 911 million, though at this rate, Michael could soon approach the global heights of Freddie Mercury. Sheep Detective trotted to a better-than-expected 15.9 million from 3,574 locations, a decent start for an original family film. The film also earned 12.1 million overseas, bringing its global weekend total to 28 million. It cost a hefty 75 million to produce. However, critics and moviegoers love the live-action CGI hybrid. Sheep Detective earned a 93% Rotten Tomatoes average and a solid A- grade on CinemaScore, which bodes well for box office longevity. Hugh Jackman stars in the PG-rated comedy, which follows a shepherd who goes missing, leaving a sheep to follow the clues, investigate human suspects, and crack the case. Based on the children's book 3 Bags Full, Sheep Detective was directed by Kyle Balda, Despicable Me, and written by Craig Mason, The Last of Us. The start is just shy of average for the genre, but most hybrids are based on high-profile IP like Minecraft, Sonic the Hedgehog, and Alvin and the Chipmunks, notes David A. Gross, who publishes the box office newsletter Franchise Re. With no big family entertainment on the calendar until Toy Story 5 on June 19th, this film has room to run, and word of mouth should help. Billie Eilish opened to $7.5 million from 2,613 venues, slightly below expectations. It was bigger than projected at the international box office with $12.6 million for a global start of $20 million. The film, co-directed by James Cameron and Eilish, was another crowd pleaser, securing a 93% on Rotten Tomatoes and A on CinemaScore. As the unwieldy title suggests, Hit Me Hard and Soft follows the 24-year-old Grammy and Oscar-winning artist on her arena tour of the same name. It was produced for $20 million through a partnership with Paramount and Interscope Records. The Billie Eilish James Cameron concert collab shows the importance of great sound systems and visually impactful 3D in movie theaters, says analyst Paul DeGarbedian, ComScore's head of marketplace trends. Early May is the box office unofficial kickoff for summer. This weekend is impressively up 88% from the same period in 2025 when Marvel's Thunderbolts, Ryan Coogler's Sinners, and a Minecraft movie were leading the charts. This Mother's Day frame was bolstered by Universal's The Super Mario Galaxy movie, which earned $6.6 million in its 6th weekend of release, as well as Amazon MGM's Project Hail Mary, which brought in $6 million in its 8th weekend of release. Right now, the overall box office is trending 16% ahead of last year, according to ComScore. The Devil Wears Prada 2 and Michael continued their impressive trajectories, but the long-term playability awards must go to Mario and Project Hail Mary, which demonstrate the vital importance of holdover strength, DeGarbedian adds. As the old saying goes, a rising tide raises all ships, and this has been the secret sauce for the year thus far. So coming up this week, I'm going to be unfortunately out of commission for a couple of days. I'll be down in Virginia for the graduation of my little brother from JMU. But Obsession is the big horror movie opening this week, or big in quotes. I don't know how big it'll be. But if it's great, I'll be back in town by Friday, and I'll try to do a late review of Obsession because I won't want to miss out if the movie turns out to be incredible. But then next week, we get into Star Wars, The Mandalorian, and Grogu, the first Star Wars movie in 7 years. And the big question is, what damage has been done to Star Wars by all these terrible fucking shows over the last couple of years? Obviously, The Mandalorian and Grogu was popular initially, but by the time I got to season 3, I was like, ugh, this is dreadful. Like, what are we doing here? So, yeah, I feel like the best way to measure the popularity of a franchise, or lack thereof, is to compare box office numbers. So we'll have a very interesting, lively conversation about Star Wars the week after next.
Remember I showed you that one? It's on the other side of the manual control surface calibration.
I don't think he knows what he's doing.
Because I almost never talk about Star Wars on this channel anymore because the shows are so bad, I can't even bring myself to watch them. Even to get the hate clicks, I can't bring myself to do it. But I do have my ticket to see The Mandalorian and Grogu, and fingers crossed it won't completely and totally suck. But I've been wrong before. At any rate, let me know what you think down in the comments below about the ongoing success of all the movies in the marketplace right now. What are the first big early summer movies that you think are gonna pop and explode in a big way? Yeah, that's an interesting question. What is going to be like the first insanely popular movie? I'm rooting for Scary Movie 6, but we have Masters of the Universe right around the corner. We got Toy Story. We got Disclosure Day. We got Death of Robin Hood. We got Supergirl, all kinds of crap. Who knows? But I'll be here to discuss and break down the success or lack thereof of all the above. But if you enjoyed this video, please consider liking, subscribing, hitting that notification bell. I would greatly appreciate it. Hope everybody has a great week, but more importantly, as always, onwards and upwards.